Hello and welcome to another lockdown learning with me, Paul Holland. This video is for those of you who just don't quite understand how the accusative works or what the accusative is. So this is a very short, very straightforward introduction and explanation of the accusative in lots of different languages. So we'll be going across some different languages that might not be familiar to you, but at least hopefully you'll see the principles in each of them. The first thing to mention is that we hardly notice them in English, or indeed in French and Italian and Spanish. We don't notice them because we use word order. We use word order as the basis for understanding the relationships within a sentence. So in a sentence such as "the dog bites the man," it's obvious to us who's doing the biting. It's the dog. If it was the other way around, then it would be the man biting the dog. We use that word order. We begin with the subject and then we move on later towards the object. So who's doing the biting? It's the dog. And who's being bitten? It's the man. Let's take this right back to some very, very basics. Here we've got two types of verbs in languages. We've got intransitive verbs. Those are verbs which are simply an action. They are simply, you are doing something. Somebody is doing something. Running. I go. I travel. On the other hand, there's this second category of verbs which are called transitive verbs. Now, transitive verbs do have a second thing involved. For example, I'm reading a book. I'm not just reading, I'm reading something. I'm doing something to something else. The teacher is teaching the class, or the teacher is teaching Latin. The dog is biting the man. So there's a second thing involved, and that second thing is called the accusative. You've possibly also seen it in school as the object. This is the object of a sentence or the object of a verb. They're both the same thing. The accusative and the object means the same thing. So we've got nominative or subject is the one who's doing something. The object or the accusative is the one that's being done to. Now, because English and French and Italian and Spanish and lots of other languages rely on word order, we don't tend to put extra endings on to the words to show who's being done. We do with a couple of words in English. We don't say he when it's an object, we say him. So we put an M on the end. So if he is the subject, he, H-E, is straightforward. We don't even think about it. He loves chocolate. He watched the film. But as soon as we change it into the object, he becomes him. The teacher praised him. And we do it with a few other words. Her, she becomes her. The teacher praised her. She's the one that's being praised. And a little bit like he becomes him with an M, we put an M on the end for the word they. So they becomes them. Okay? We watched them. Because Latin and German use a different ending for certain things, that means they can be more flexible with their word order. So here's the Latin word for the dog bites the man, and we can see that it's clearly the dog is the one that's doing the biting because that's the normal ending for dog, but man has got an M on the end. That's the accusative ending. Wir is the normal word for man, and now we've changed it to virum. And because we've got that ending, because it's absolutely clear who's the one who was bitten, we can change the word order around. And we can begin with the word the man was. It's a bit like saying in English, this man was bitten by the dog. But that's a different kind of construction anyway in English. But just see it as a very straightforward, the dog bites the man, but we've put it in a different word order to emphasize it's the man that was the one that was bitten, and we've put it at the front of the sentence. German does the same. It doesn't often add an ending to the word. Sometimes it does with certain nouns, but most of the time it's the word in front of it. It's the word for the or a. So here we are. Here's the sentence. The dog bites the man in German, and you can see that instead of der Mann, it's become den Mann, which means that if you wanted to, you could swap it around. In German, only the masculine is affected by the accusative. So it shows that it can work without it. It doesn't need it necessarily. It works perfectly well without showing the accusative in the feminine and the neuter, but the masculine is affected. So I watched a film is going to be not ein Film, but einen Film. Ich habe einen Film gesehen. Good. I hope that explains the basics of the accusative. If you want more information about transitive and intransitive verbs and how they affect reflexive verbs, then have a look at my video on reflexive verbs. One final thing to mention is that particularly in German and in Latin, the accusative is also used for certain prepositions. So you'll know that a preposition is a short word which tells you where something is, and it's always followed by a noun. For example, on the table, in the cup, in my head, outside the house. And with certain prepositions in Latin and German, you have to make sure that the noun that follows them is in a particular case. So here are some of them in German. These are your typical prepositions that are then followed by an accusative noun. And here are some in Latin, where when you've used those prepositions, you need to use the accusative, not the ablative. If you want more information on Latin prepositions, there's a video in my playlist. Go and have a look at it. It's an incredibly popular video. Thank you for watching. I hope that explains the accusative and the object of a sentence. If it was useful and you found that it explained it nicely for you, I'm really happy. That's great. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, go and check out other things in my playlists as well. You'll find all sorts of stuff on language learning, but also if you're doing an EPQ or if you're interested in art history or ancient history, then there might be something of interest for you. In the meantime, thank you very much and goodbye.